Hi everyone, it's Sam, NFT Statistics with your Proof Daily Countdown. Bring you the charts, the pictures, the stories that matter most every single weekday in NFTs. We're going to do a quick market overview, then talk about CryptoPunks, Ordinals, and a bunch of really fun sales that happened over the weekend. Starting with the market overview, volume's largely flat. The reason they're flat, not down, is because there's been a ton of CryptoPunk volume. Wrap CryptoPunks were more than 50% of the volume on Blur so far today. So really incredible amount of volume in Punks, really a ton of airdrop farming there. We'll talk about that later. OpenSea market share below 20%, just 16% for OpenSea, while Blur is around 78%. Unique buyers were up, seeing a bit of upward progress over the past week. Now, OpenSea still has about 70% market share of total wallets of unique buyers. It's just those buyers are doing lower ETH transactions, which is why their ETH volume market share is so low. In terms of prices, continue this downward slide. Really just a lot of weakness over the past 2 weeks. Over the weekend, CryptoPunks were up about 7%, but Cool Cats, World of Women, VFriends, Coda, Invisible Friends, Suzuki, all down more than 5%. One thing that's been happening lately is really a lot of the utility-based kind of PFP projects that have been a bit newer have really started to fall off. We've talked about Doodles, CloneX, and Moonbirds, seeing it a bit with Bored Ape Yacht Club over the weekend. This chart here looks at the 5 biggest projects outside of Punks: Bored Ape, Suzuki, Doodle, Clone, Moonbird versus Punks. And you can see Punks are up something like 18%, while the rest of them are down on average about 30%. So serious divergence there. Midcaps were down again over the weekend. DeGen did well, while Opepin Edition was down about 25%. Rumble Kong, A Kid Called Beast, down as well. In terms of art block volumes, really not a whole lot. Only 3 projects doing more than 10 ETH of volume over the past day. So really nothing to get too excited about there. One project that did do well over the weekend, 3 days ago, someone swept 6 Anti-Cyclones by William Upon, and the floor price is up above 10 ETH again. So that's great to see. Here you can see DC Investor said that he's pleased to add 6 Anti-Cyclones to his collection, calling William Upon one of the most skill generative artists of our time. I love Anti-Cyclones. Really cool to see that. And then one other project, Momoguru, has been very, very weak. We talked about this, kind of a very experienced production team, experienced animation team that launched an NFT at the beginning of March. And you can see that the floor price has really gone down only ever since the launch. But yesterday they announced a roadmap, announced a roadmap, but nothing too exciting here. They talked about how they're going to be doing this Momo box, a snapshot and an airdrop, more snapshots, more airdrops, parties, more expansion. Very kind of standard roadmap for what we see from a lot of projects, aside from the fact that the snapshot for this airdrop is coming on March 22nd. One thing I've talked about, though, is airdrops tend not to work unless you have a whole new group of buyers that can end up entering your ecosystem because of this airdrop, maybe because of a different price point or something really new in the story. I think when you don't have that, you just end up with the ETH getting distributed across more NFTs, and you don't see the prices go up that much, which I think is why not too many projects are doing airdrops anymore. Not too surprising to see Momoguru not make a big move on the back of this. Second story to talk about, CryptoPunks dominate volume over the weekend. This is a CryptoPunks floor price chart, starting at 60. So the axis is kind of slated here to make this look pretty dynamic. But what you can see is that the floor price, basically month to date, has gone from 63 to 74. One thing I've talked about for a while is how CryptoPunks went the longest of any NFT I've ever seen without making a 10% move over a week. It ended up being around 230 consecutive days where CryptoPunks did not make a single 10% move over a 1 week period. Well, that ended this week with the floor price getting to 74. That was more than a 10% up move versus where we had been. To put in perspective just how stable Punks had been, Bored Ape Yacht Club has never gone 50 days without a 10% move. And here you had Punks going 230 days. So pretty crazy how stable they were, but interesting to see this movement. Again, that chart showing that they've been outperforming while everyone else has been weak. This is the percentage of total volume of all ETH NFTs that are trading that CryptoPunks have been, where you can see we're at 20% of total volume plus has been in CryptoPunks over the past week. Pretty incredible. And the reason for this is because of Blur. Historically, all the Punks volume happened on CryptoPunks on the Larva Labs website. What you can see here is more than 80% of the volume has been on Blur. That's kind of a first. Why is this traded so heavily on Blur? It's a great airdrop farming project. 0 royalties, really lower the decay factor. The floor is quite high. You get more points for higher ETH value NFTs that you bid on, and it's a stable NFT. As I've shown, the floor price doesn't move too much, so it's one that people can feel stable buying. Now, one thing that's happening, this chart here shows the amount of times the average CryptoPunk has been flipped over the course of most weeks. And normally it's been 1.1 to 1.2 times. So vast majority of punks just trade once, end up in a new wallet. Last week, 5.1 flips per CryptoPunk. This week, we already have 3.6 flips per CryptoPunk, and we're only in the second day of the week. So the flipping is really kind of out of control. These two punks have been flipped 33 and 44 times. For context on how much it is to get flipped 44 times in 1 week, this is just in the past week. In the history of punks, which is almost 6 years old, no NFT had traded more than 17 times. Than 17 times. These two punks both had traded 17 times. That is the most of any NFT in the history of CryptoPunks over a 5.5 year period. And two traded 33 and 44 just in 1 week this week. Shows how crazy it is. The big question, is this long-term positive for punks? What this chart looks at is the number of NFTs of punks that are trading for the first time ever. So that have never been traded over the past 6 years and trading for the first time now. And what you can see is over the past week, we've had about 75 NFTs that are punks that have traded for the first time. Now, CryptoPunks have a lot of whales who claim them and we're just slowly offloading them. So this has clearly given those whales an opportunity to convert that into ETH and to lighten their CryptoPunk bag. Now, one of the things that worries me is I looked at here, these are the wallets that have bought the most and have sold the most over the past week. And 3 are now long 50, 30, and 28 versus where they were a week ago. And those wallets are all airdrop farmers. So right now we have a lot of NFTs in the hands of airdrop farmers who eventually are going to have to sell. We've seen this a lot of times. We saw with doodles, with moonbirds, a little bit with apes, that airdrop farming initially can lead to these really strong up moves. But eventually when you get all these farmers that have a bigger bag than they want, they have to sell eventually. And when they do, that can be negative. So curious to see how that goes. The ones that have sold the most, these are longer term punk holders. Okay, so the big sellers so far have been players who hold a bunch of punks or who have been in the game a lot, and they've been selling to airdrop farmers. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. You can see right now there are about 100 NFTs listed at 75 ETH floor, and we're at a 74.7 ETH floor. So there's a wall of something like 100 that are all listed within 0.3 ETH. So kind of an interesting dynamic. We will see how it plays out. For prices to go up over time, you need more new buyers than real sellers, okay? And then the airdrop farming in the middle is all irrelevant. What you ultimately need over time is more people want to hold these for the long term. We've seen a bunch of people get out. We will see if long-term buyers emerge here. Will be interesting to see. Third story to talk about, DeGods Ordinals 2X. Here is a tweet. You can see that DeGods, according to DeGods, did more volume than all the other ordinals in the world combined, times about 4 or 5 over the weekend. The prices, remember, the mint for the DeGods Ordinals was at 0.33 Bitcoin. You can see this column here. You have a lot of them selling at 0.8 or more. So this is a quick 2x, 3x. Some of the more grail, some of the more grail ones here trading at 1.8 Bitcoin. So this is clearly just a really good trade for anyone who is smart enough and who is savvy enough to get in on Friday. Why is this? There are 4,212 DeGods owners and only 535 DeGods on Ordinals. So presumably, let's say half of the owners actually want an ordinal as well. Clearly, there's a supply-demand imbalance. I think that's why the price has gone up so much. Let's also talk quickly about Yuga Ordinals. Remember, they minted around 2.3 Bitcoin. They're being traded right now in Ethereum. So in Ethereum terms, that mint was around 35 ETH. And these are some of the more notable sales that have happened in Yuga Ordinals over the past couple of days. The cheapest was at 20 ETH. That was the very low. That was clearly down very bad versus where that was minted. And you had one recently as high as 36 ETH. Which is basically flat or a little bit up from the cheapest of the mints. And then in general, we're seeing most of the sales at 30 to 31. So down a little bit, but not all that bad. The artist who did the art did do a tweet thread talking a bit about ordinals, kind of put these pictures here together, which I think make them look more aesthetically interesting, talking about all the different seasons and how each ordinal follows a different season, and then does talk about how they were deliberately meant to be in these series, where you have series of 12 and they all look kind of like they're doing some sort of progressive thing. I think when you see them all together, it does look a lot better than some of the ones on their own that we saw or some of the patterns just on their own. I think this does kind of, aesthetically it makes it a little bit more interesting in my view. The artist also did say that they plan on reinvesting some of the proceeds to continue exploring on Bitcoin blockchain. They said that's all for now and later a puzzle. Who knows what any of that means? Either way, saying they're going to continue to be involved in ordinals and keeping it a bit enigmatic as Yuga often does. Last thing to talk about is 4 notable sales. The first, most expensive sale of the weekend was this black suit bored ape, sold for 147 ETH. Now, to me, this was a pretty bearish trade, only because the black suit trade has historically been, in the 200 to 300 ETH range. Looking at some of the biggest sales, some of the most recent sales, actually, you had one at 350 ETH, one at 430. The cheapest before this 147 was at 159, and then you had one at 250. So for where black suits have been trading, this 147 was a little bit cheap. Grant Yoon, all-time high in hell is this piece, trade on AOTM for 82 ETH. That is an all-time high for Grant Yoon. Grant Yoon, just an incredible artist, but also someone who really understands the NFT game. He came onto our podcast a few months ago. I'd recommend going and listening to that just for kind of a masterclass on how to build a brand, get your prices high, and just be like someone who caters to collectors. I think Grant does it the best of anyone. Here are some of his previous sales. Citrus at 69 ETH, one at 70 ETH, 69. This one from New York at 47. All big sales, but this was an all-time high at 82. So congrats to him and the buyer. Next sale to talk about, Ponzi scheme by Bongdoe for 10 ETH. We have talked about Bongdoe. He does a lot of this glitch work. He put a poem with this piece in the description. In the world of finance, there lies a scheme, a deceptive illusion, a treacherous dream. Ponzi the name, the infamous game, promising riches yet leaving no gain. I'm clearly not a poet. I'm clearly not a poem reader, but I still read to you what he said. If you go read it, there are a bunch more verses. You can figure it out. But for Bongdoe, this was a little bit at the low end. He had two recent sales at 14.3 and 13.2 ETH. Still a 10 ETH sale. This guy's just gotten on the scene over the past 6 months. So congratulations to Bongdoe for that. And then lastly, two sales from Neural Bricolage, who does a lot of interesting work with AI, with her own art, and with all sorts of things. Both of these sales were to 6529 for a combined 30 ETH. About this first piece, it's an animation that has a changing image and also music. And she says this might be the best thing I ever made. And it's described as a playful animation, transport you to a New Orleans sidewalk cafe where the air is filled with scents of cafe au lait and beignets, and the main occupation is people watching. So you kind of get that feel when you see this piece go through all the different images. And as for the second image, the one on the right, she says that this is a tribute to Russian women in exile throughout history, to those who made it, to those who barely made it, and those who did not. Those are my roots, my inspiration, the spiritual place I come from. So a very personal piece for her. Congrats to her. Congrats to 6529 on that purchase. That's all for now. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. If you liked the video, please like it below. Subscribe to the channel. Tell us what you think. And we'll be back tomorrow and every single weekday with another show.